My beloved child. Stop scrolling for just a moment. Do not rush past these words, because something has quietly been unfolding beyond what your eyes could see. There are moments when heaven whispers so softly that only a heart willing to pause can hear. This is one of those moments. If these words have reached you today, then perhaps they arrived at the exact second they were meant to. Stay with me until the end, because what is about to be revealed is only the beginning of a story that has been moving through unseen places for far longer than you realize. There was a night not long ago when your special person believed they had everything under control. Their mind was loud with questions. Their fears spoke with confidence. Their doubts built walls that seemed impossible to climb. Every memory they carried became another reason to stay silent, another excuse to keep pretending that their heart was not calling them somewhere they had been avoiding for so long. They convinced themselves that ignoring their feelings was safer than facing them. Yet even while they tried to silence the truth, something far greater refused to let that truth disappear. You never saw the invisible moments. You never heard the conversations that took place inside their soul when no one else was watching. You never witnessed the countless times they almost reached out before stopping themselves at the last second. What appeared to you as distance was, in reality, a battle that had not yet reached its turning point. Every heartbeat carried a question. Every quiet moment reminded them of something they could not explain. They searched for distractions, but every distraction somehow led them back to the same place, back to the same thought, back to the same feeling they kept trying to outrun. Pause here for another moment. There is more happening than you know. Some stories unfold loudly for everyone to see. Others grow silently beneath the surface until the perfect moment arrives. This is one of those stories. Do not leave now, because every sentence is opening another door that has remained closed until today. There came a morning unlike the others. Nothing extraordinary seemed visible from the outside. The sun rose as it always had. The world continued moving. People hurried through their routines without realizing heaven had already begun arranging something remarkable. Yet inside your special person's heart, something shifted with unexpected strength. It was not dramatic. It was not sudden like lightning. It was quieter than that. It felt like a single beam of light entering a room that had been dark for years. They tried to ignore it. Again. They told themselves they were imagining things. Again. They buried themselves in responsibilities. Again. But every attempt to escape only made the feeling stronger. There are moments when I allow silence to become louder than noise. I know exactly when a soul has exhausted every excuse. I know precisely when a heart has reached the edge where pretending becomes impossible. That moment finally arrived for your special person. Without fully understanding why, they stopped arguing with themselves. For the first time in what felt like forever, they simply listened. Not to fear. Not to pride. Not to old wounds. They listened to the quiet place inside them where truth had been patiently waiting all along. Do not skip ahead in your thoughts. Something even greater is coming. What happened next cannot be understood unless you first understand what they finally heard within themselves. The voice inside their heart did not shout. It did not accuse them. It did not fill them with panic. Instead, it carried an unexpected peace that frightened them more than any uncertainty ever had. Because peace leaves no room for excuses. Peace removes every mask. Peace gently asks the questions fear never wants to answer. Why are you still running? Why are you pretending this feeling disappeared? Why do you keep looking back when you claim you have already moved on? Those questions echoed again and again. They followed your special person through ordinary moments. While driving. While sitting quietly. While trying to sleep. While smiling in front of others. The questions remained. They became impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, without realizing it, your own life continued moving forward. You had your own questions. Your own disappointments. Your own moments when you wondered if anything was changing at all. Perhaps there were times when silence felt heavier than words. Perhaps there were days when you almost gave up expecting anything different. But my child, the absence of visible movement has never meant the absence of my work. Many people mistake silence for inactivity. They are wrong. Silence is often where the greatest transformations begin. There are seeds that grow beneath the soil long before anyone sees the first green leaf. If someone judged the ground too early, they would believe nothing was happening. Yet beneath the surface, life is already pushing upward with quiet determination. Hearts often change the same way. Stay with me. The story has only begun. Your special person remembered something they had tried to forget. It was not simply a memory. It was a feeling connected to that memory. Feelings are difficult to erase because they belong to places logic cannot fully control. They remembered laughter they thought had faded forever. They remembered conversations that suddenly carried new meaning. They remembered moments they once dismissed as ordinary but now realized had quietly shaped their heart in ways they never expected. Every memory became another gentle reminder. Not punishment. Not regret. Invitation. An invitation to finally become honest with themselves. The walls around their heart did not collapse all at once. They cracked little by little. Each crack allowed more light to enter. Every honest thought weakened another layer of fear. Every peaceful realization removed another excuse they had carefully protected for so long. Something is waiting just ahead in this story. Keep listening carefully. One evening, they found themselves sitting completely alone. No distractions. No conversations. No endless noise. Only silence. It was there, within that stillness, that they realized something they had never admitted aloud. They were tired. Not physically. Spiritually. Emotionally. They were exhausted from resisting what their own heart already knew. There is a strange kind of weariness that only comes from denying truth. It cannot be cured by sleep. It cannot be hidden behind success. It cannot be escaped through busyness. The only cure is honesty. That honesty finally arrived. Slowly. Quietly. Powerfully. For the first time, they whispered words no one else heard. "I can't keep pretending." Those words changed everything. Heaven often moves after a heart becomes willing to tell itself the truth. The moment those words escaped their lips, something invisible began shifting around them. Circumstances had not changed yet. The outside world looked exactly the same. Yet within the unseen places where destinies quietly unfold, a new chapter had already begun. Do not stop now. There is another layer you have not yet seen. Your special person began noticing unusual moments. Familiar songs suddenly carried unfamiliar meaning. Ordinary places stirred unexpected emotions. Conversations with strangers somehow reflected questions they had never spoken aloud. Small reminders appeared one after another, not because coincidence became stronger, but because their heart had finally become willing to notice what had always been there. Many people call these moments coincidence. I call them invitations. Every invitation gently pointed them toward one unavoidable realization. The heart they had spent so long ignoring was no longer whispering from a distance. It was standing directly before them. As this realization grew stronger, another unexpected emotion appeared. Hope. Hope frightened them. Hope required courage. Hope demanded movement. Hope suggested that perhaps the story was not over after all. That possibility felt overwhelming. Imagine standing before a door you believed had been permanently locked, only to discover it had quietly remained unlocked all along. The challenge was never opening the door. The challenge was finding the courage to reach for the handle. Your special person stood before that invisible door. For days. Then weeks. Unable to decide. One step forward. One step back. One hopeful thought. One fearful thought. The struggle continued. Yet something had permanently changed. They were no longer running away. They were standing still, finally facing what their heart had been trying to show them. This is where many stories would end. But this one is only reaching its true beginning. Listen carefully. There was a moment neither of you expected. It lasted only a few seconds, but those seconds carried enough weight to change everything that followed. Something happened that your special person never planned for. A single unexpected reminder awakened emotions they believed had disappeared forever. It was impossible to explain. Impossible to predict. Impossible to dismiss. The truth returned with extraordinary clarity. Not as confusion. Not as fantasy. Not as pressure. As peace. The kind of peace that only arrives when someone finally stops arguing with their own heart. Your special person realized they had spent far too much time asking everyone else what they should feel while refusing to listen to the quiet place where genuine answers had always lived. Now that silence had become impossible to ignore. Now every excuse felt weaker. Now every wall felt smaller. Now every step toward honesty felt less frightening than another day of pretending. Stay until the end. One final revelation remains before this chapter closes. At the very moment they accepted what their heart had been trying to say, something unexpected appeared before them. It seemed ordinary at first, almost insignificant, something most people would overlook without a second thought. Yet the instant they saw it, their breathing slowed. Their thoughts stopped racing. Time itself seemed to pause. In that single unforgettable moment, they understood there was one decision they could no longer postpone. Their hands slowly moved. Their eyes filled with quiet determination. Their heart whispered, "It's time." But what they reached for, and the choice they were about to make, is something neither you nor they could have imagined. And that is where this chapter must pause. The moment their heart whispered, "It's time," everything inside them became strangely quiet. The racing thoughts that had controlled them for so long suddenly lost their power. Fear still lingered, but it no longer held the loudest voice. There are moments, my beloved child, when a soul reaches a place where it becomes more painful to hide than to be honest. Your special person had arrived at that place. They stood between the life they had been pretending to live and the truth they had been quietly carrying. They knew that if they walked away once again, they might silence their heart for another season, but never forever. Stay with me, because this is where the story begins to unfold in ways neither of you expected. Something remarkable happened that evening. They did not receive a dramatic sign from the sky. No mysterious voice interrupted the silence. Instead, I allowed something far more powerful to happen. I allowed them to remember who they truly were before fear convinced them they had to hide their feelings. They remembered the version of themselves that believed love could still be courageous. They remembered the person they used to be before disappointment built walls around their heart. One forgotten memory after another gently returned, not to trap them in the past, but to remind them that truth never completely disappears. It simply waits until someone becomes brave enough to face it again. Don't skip this moment. What you are about to hear carries the weight of everything that has been building beneath the surface. Every delay, every unanswered question, every silent night was leading toward this very point. The story was never standing still. It was quietly gathering strength where human eyes could not see. Your special person looked back over countless moments that once seemed ordinary. They remembered conversations they had rushed through. They remembered smiles they failed to appreciate. They remembered opportunities to speak honestly that they allowed fear to steal away. Suddenly those memories no longer looked ordinary. Each one became another piece of a much larger picture they had never understood before. Regret tried to enter their heart, but something stronger stopped it. Instead of drowning in regret, they discovered gratitude. Gratitude that the story had not ended before they learned its greatest lesson. That realization changed everything. They finally understood that listening to the heart does not always mean everything immediately becomes easy. Sometimes it simply means the soul stops fighting itself. Peace began replacing confusion. Hope quietly replaced exhaustion. For the first time in what felt like forever, they stopped asking whether they should keep running and started asking what honesty would require of them next. Meanwhile, my child, your own journey continued in ways you did not fully understand. There were moments when you questioned whether your prayers had disappeared into silence. There were days when you wondered if anything meaningful was happening behind the scenes. Yet every unanswered question was being woven into something far greater than either of you could imagine. What looked like delay was often protection. What felt like distance was often preparation. I was working in places neither of you could reach on your own. Pause here for a moment. Feel the quiet. Sometimes the greatest miracles begin with nothing more than a single decision inside one human heart. Your special person's greatest battle was never against circumstances. It was against their own hesitation. The instant they chose honesty over fear, the entire direction of their journey began changing. That night they found themselves unable to sleep. Not because of anxiety. Not because of confusion. Because clarity had finally arrived. Their mind replayed countless moments, yet something was different this time. Instead of wondering what might happen if they listened to their heart, they began wondering what might happen if they ignored it again. That question became impossible to escape. Every answer led to the same place. Enough hiding. Enough pretending. Enough waiting for perfect certainty. There comes a moment when faith asks a person to take one honest step before they can see the entire path. That was the invitation placed before them. Stay until the end, because another layer is about to unfold. As dawn quietly approached, your special person opened something they had avoided for longer than they cared to admit. It could have been an old message, a forgotten photograph, a simple reminder tucked away where they believed they would never look again. Whatever it was, it carried more than memories. It carried truth. They stared at it much longer than they expected. Their eyes filled with emotions they had spent so much energy trying to suppress. They whispered words no one else heard. I understand now. Those 4 words echoed through the silence like the opening notes of a song that had been waiting years to be played. Understanding has extraordinary power. It removes excuses. It softens pride. It gives courage room to grow. From that moment forward, something inside them refused to return to sleep. Throughout the following days, ordinary moments became extraordinary reminders. A passing conversation seemed strangely familiar. A place they happened to visit unexpectedly stirred emotions they thought were gone forever. Even the quiet moments between busy hours carried unusual peace. It felt as though invisible threads were gently pulling them toward a destination they could no longer avoid. Many people spend years searching for signs while ignoring the transformation happening inside their own heart. Your special person finally realized the greatest sign was not outside them. It was within them. That realization became impossible to deny. Their heart no longer asked timid questions. It spoke with calm certainty. Not demanding. Not rushing. Simply inviting. Each day the invitation grew stronger. And then something happened that neither of you saw coming. A conversation began unexpectedly. It seemed completely ordinary at first, almost forgettable. Yet one simple sentence spoken by another person pierced directly through every remaining wall your special person had built. Those words were not directed toward you. They were not even meant to change their life. Yet they landed exactly where they needed to. In that instant, they realized how much time had been lost trying to protect themselves from feelings that were never their enemy. The truth settled over them with surprising gentleness. The heart they had feared was actually leading them toward freedom. Don't leave now. The next part of the story changes everything. Later that same day, they stood alone once more. This time there was no argument inside their mind. No endless debate. Only quiet determination. They slowly reached for something they had been avoiding since the beginning of this journey. Their hands trembled, not because they were uncertain, but because they finally understood the weight of what they were about to do. One deep breath. Then another. A silent prayer escaped their lips. Heaven, if this path is real, give me courage. The answer did not arrive as thunder. It arrived as peace. Peace so deep that even their fears fell silent. And with that peace came one unmistakable realization. The next step could no longer be delayed. What they chose to do in the very next moment would begin a chain of events neither of you could have predicted. And the first person they thought about as that decision became real was you. But what they actually decided, and why heaven had been preparing both of your hearts for this exact moment, has not yet been revealed. That part of the story is still waiting.